You're listening to Coming of Cage, a Nicolas Cage podcast. Hello and welcome back to the Coming of Cage podcast. I am your host, Derek, and I've got with me my buddy and co-host, blah, blah, blah. I'm off to a great start, man. My
Yeah, this
co-host
is going well.
going great. Ryan, hi, buddy.
Hi, how are
How are
you?
you? Jesus
We
Christ.
are really doing well right now.
It's fine. It's fine. I'm doing well. I'm doing well.
That's great. I'm glad to hear that, Derek.
How are you?
I'm doing well.
Welcome to episode 20 of the show. And you might not know it from this intro, but we've done together like 300 podcast episodes over the years.
This is an intro from two people that are really comfortable doing podcasts together.
Clearly, yeah. It's because we're not recording at our normal time. That's what it is.
That's right. Everything's thrown off.
But this week, we are talking about the iconic 2011 Nicolas Cage movie, Ghost Rider: Spirit of Vengeance, which, if you haven't seen, is the one where Johnny Blaze, tortured by the Ghost Rider's curse, gets a chance of redemption through protecting the devil's son, whose father is pursuing him.
Yeah, that kind of describes it.
Yeah. Divisive film, 4.5 stars on Amazon, 4.3 out of 10 on IMDb. But yeah, it's the sequel to Ghost Rider, which we have not covered on the show yet because we spin a wheel and it randomly picks a Nicolas Cage movie. But yeah, I had never seen this one.
We have covered this one. We have covered the first one on a different podcast, though. So
that's true.
It's not this movie. We're gonna have to talk about that a little bit when we get to some of the other Nick Cage movies where one or both of us hasn't seen the first one, like National Treasure. I haven't ever seen any of those, so I feel like if we get a National Treasure movie, it needs to be the first one first, so that I'm not being weird about it. But yeah, we're going into this one. We have both seen the first one at some point, even if we haven't reviewed it. So we may make references to the first one. At least I'm going to. So
yeah, that's fair.
100%.
Yeah, I think that's very fair. So yeah, so basically the way we do this is Ryan takes diligent notes as he watches the Nicolas Cage movie, and then we go through those notes. So
yeah,
Ryan, do you want to kick us off?
Well, I want to say before this starts, in case you haven't listened to some of the previous episodes, this was a movie I vowed to never watch. I loved the cheesiness of the first one. I'm not under the impression that it was a good movie by any means, but it's a good bad movie. And this movie, when the trailer came out, it had a scene of Nick Cage / Johnny Blaze pissing fire, and when I saw that trailer, I said, I'm not going to go see that movie ever. And here I am watching it for you, Derek, and the three people that listen to this podcast. So you're welcome.
Hey, I had never seen it either for similar reasons. So, we're in this together, buddy.
Fair enough. All right. Well, my first note is Marvel Knights ? Because right at the very beginning of the movie, a thing pops up that says Marvel Knights. And there is in the comics, there is a Marvel Knights group that has Blade and Ghost Rider and I think Moon Knight. I'm not super familiar with them, but I thought maybe that was a reference to that, but I have no idea. It was just a weird thing.
I think the goal was to create that branding, and then this movie didn't do particularly well, and so the rights went back to Marvel Studios. So that didn't get to happen.
Fair enough.
That's my take.
And then, we get Idris Elba popping up, which I had no idea he was even in this movie.
Not just Idris Elba. Idris Elba doing a French accent.
Which I have a note later that French accent ends up being, I don't want to say bad because I don't really know a lot of French people, so I don't really know what a good French accent sounds like, but it was distracting for sure.
I just don't know why he needed to be French. He's got a wonderful voice already, and the fact that he's French seems fairly irrelevant to the overall character. So
yeah, they don't go to France or have something that make that relevant. Yeah, so it's a weird decision, but hey, maybe he just wanted to do it. I don't know.
He was like, I've never had a chance to do a French accent before.
Yeah, could be. So this movie came out at a time when there was like a specific type of action movie. The way it was done, I think if I remember right, the people that directed Crank. and a couple other like weird action movies of that time period.
Hmm.
And there's those movies were a lot of like jump cuts, fast cuts, action where you don't really get more than a few seconds at a time. And watching those movies now is kind of nauseating. The
Yeah.
action right at the beginning of this was real bad. Is basically what I'm getting at.
No, I'm with you. There's also some choices like from a cinematography standpoint that are odd, where it kept doing this cut that would then rewind a couple of
Yeah,
seconds. And I found that really distracting and
jarring.
jarring. Yeah, each time that it happened. And there was a lot of like the sped up action, especially when Nick would like change.
Yeah.
And it just was very strange to watch.
So in the beginning of this movie, there's basically it looks like a monastery or something,
Hmm.
essentially, or like the Vatican. I don't really know what it's
I
supposed
think
to
it's just a
be,
monastery. Yeah.
but Idris Elba's character is there looking for someone, and then this other group shows up looking for someone, and then it randomly cuts to this woman and her kid running, which implies that they're the ones that people are looking for. And they basically end up getting chased out of this. They were in like a Peugeot, like tiny Peugeot car of some kind, and nothing fast. But then there's like a chase, and Idris Elba gets his tire shot on his motorcycle, since apparently it's really important that he's a motorcycle rider, just like Johnny Blaze. They can connect on that point. But a bullet hits his tire, which is a really tough shot to make, but somehow they make it, and his bike wrecks, and he flies off the bike. And while he's flying off the bike off of a cliff, he turns around in midair, pulls a gun out, and shoots up the door of the chasing vehicle to where they wreck. But
Hmm.
you don't really see what happens to him. Not then, anyway.
No. And it's important to point out that, so he plays a character named Moreau. He has no superpowers. This is just a dude.
Allegedly. I
Allegedly.
mean,
Allegedly.
yeah,
It's never said that he has superpowers
right. His
at any
superpower is
point.
belief in God,
Yes.
I think. So yeah, you get that weird slow-mo gunshot. And then you cut to Nick Cage exposition, which I don't really know how to take, because it is kind of recounting the events of the first movie, but it also is not recounting the events of the first movie accurately. So like there's like a bunch of animation where it shows the things that Johnny Blaze went through in the first movie.
Mhm.
And like there's a random shot of him pulling his pants down and doing a flip on the motorcycle.
Mhm.
So that was my next note, bare ass Cage, except it's like an animation.
Right.
But
Yeah.
that never happened in the first movie. He was more known for like Evil Knievel type stunts rather than like X Games stunts.
Mhm.
And then it shows him signing the contract
Mhm.
uh, for the devil to take his soul or be his rider or whatever. And it's a totally different devil than what's in the first one. Even in this like animated scene, they didn't even try and make it look like it was the same actor. It was a totally different
Yeah.
actor.
It's a very strange. It's almost like they didn't. It feels like they didn't have the rights to the first movie.
Yeah, it felt like they either did, yeah, maybe they didn't have the rights, or maybe they were doing like a soft reboot of some kind where they kept some things and changed others. I mean, there is an explanation later in the movie as to why the devil looks different now,
Right, but that doesn't explain why he would look different than he did in
right
the
in the
same.
flashbacks.
Yeah.
Right, right.
Right. Or why just like the events would be. They're like different enough, right, where it's like legally distinct.
Yeah.
But they were both Columbia Pictures. So like I don't know. There's not a good explanation for that. There's only 4 years between the movies. So it's not like.
But he looks way older in this movie than he did in the first one. Did you notice that too? Maybe it's just his hairline. I don't know. His hair was not doing him any favors in this movie.
No. I mean, it's been a little while. It's probably been 2 or 3 years now since we watched the first one. So I don't know that specifically.
But in
But
the first one, there was literally a scene where people were debating whether it was his real body or a CG body. So, I mean, he clearly looked younger in that movie. This movie, there's nothing like that, for
well, we
sure.
never see him with his shirt off.
There's probably a reason. I mean, I'm not trying to body shame
That's
or anything, but he's definitely not in the same shape he was for the first movie.
fair enough.
Um, so yeah, that was my next note, is this is not how it was in the first movie. That's not the only example. That's just like the most glaring example.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And then he talks about, like, in the same exposition, he's talking about the rider and how the rider hungers and like will will stare your soul and swallow it or something like that. And he talks about the things that he'll stare at you for, and one of them is apparently illegal downloads. So if you illegally download a movie, then your soul is going to get devoured by the rider of the devil. So just keep that in mind.
Yeah, well, I mean, you wouldn't download a car, right, Ryan?
Yeah. Ew, that
That's
was a
that
weird
era,
line.
right? That was that
Yeah,
era, right?
that
Yeah.
was that era. Yeah, that was just a really weird line. I think they were just trying to be funny, but for me, it didn't really land. And then it shows I'm probably going to be skipping some stuff, but at some point it shows what happened to Mobius or whatever his name is, Moreau.
Yeah. He got stuck in a tree.
He apparently got caught by a tree. So he survived. And it's like a weird, so there's like a serious scene and then it's a weird cut to him just like hanging in the tree comically.
Yeah.
And then back to the serious scene. So
there's a lot of that. The tone of the movie is all over the place. It doesn't know if it's trying to be dark and gritty or kind of silly.
Right. Another difference between this one and the first one is that he has a totally different bike in this one, which kind of is a plot hole for me as the movie goes on. Like I can understand. They say that anything he rides can become his vehicle and be like a fire vehicle, which is cool and all, but then like he'll pick a vehicle and it'll become the fire vehicle, but then his bike will come riding up later by itself.
Well, I think
he can possess any vehicle that he for any length of time that he's ever used.
I think so. I think that's the implication.
So he could call the crane. Why doesn't he just not call the crane everywhere to just destroy everything?
Because it's probably super slow.
No, because in the first movie, the bike would go like 4,000 miles an hour. So clearly he can speed up whatever vehicle he's on. Anyway, it's a weird plot hole thing, but yeah there'll be several notes about that.
I'm okay with it being a different bike simply because now he's in Europe, and I guess it would have been easier for him to get there without the bike.
I am too, but if he always has this one bike that he's connected to, then why is it not the original bike? You know what I mean? That's, I guess, where it starts to get weird. But whatever, we're not going to... We've talked enough about this. We don't need to keep going into this. And then there's like a weird shot of Idris Elba's character sitting in a windowsill with like lightning storms happening behind him. And so my next note was, does he purposefully sit in dramatic locales? Because he seems like he just wants to sit someplace that's a really good cinematic view multiple times in this movie. But, you know, hey, who can blame him, I guess. And then we see this, I think this is when the, what's the guy? Krieger? Is that the guy's name?
Which guy?
The guy that works for the devil and later becomes a different guy.
Yeah, so that's Kerrigan.
Yeah,
Kerrigan.
Yeah, and so he is like trying to catch this girl and is and her son, which is also what Ghost Rider is doing. Moreau has contacted Johnny Blaze to go and save this boy in return for getting the curse of the Ghost Rider removed from him. That's basically the whole plot of this movie. But we at this point don't know anything about this kid other than it just seems to be a random kid.
Very true. I will say, well, we know he's connected to a prophecy. We know that at this point, but like, I do have a hard time with if Johnny can't control the rider, then why would the rider search for the kid?
Also, there's points in the movie where it's shown he is controlling the rider. Right. So yeah, I mean, and in the first movie, he could control it. So by the end of the movie, he could control it.
But he's like hiding out. Like the way the movie starts is that he clearly can't control it.
Sure. But it also says that he's like constantly hungry for souls, but he's only shown to like do the penance stare to one person in the whole movie, I think.
In the second movie?
Yes.
No, he does it a few times.
Well, he starts to, but then he like drops people and it doesn't actually finish, but they only actually finishes like one time.
Yeah. It seems to take a while.
Yeah. He like literally will stare at him for a long, long time and nothing will happen. But yeah. Anyway, he shows up when this girl is getting attacked and her son is getting attacked and attempted kidnapping by this guy. And you hear like a weird bunch of predator noises, which is apparently something that this Ghost Rider does now, which he didn't do in the first movie. It's just like echoey predator noises that happens before he shows up.
Warning the bad guys.
Right. So then he shows up and everybody just stares at him. like you're laughing, but that's literally what happens.
Yeah, no,
There's
I know.
2 minutes or something where people are just staring at. He's literally just standing there, and all these people are fully armed are just staring at him.
Mm-hmm.
And it's a really weird scene. He does look cooler in this one, I'll say it. I think I prefer the like classic Bone look, but he does look very cool in this one with like the charred face. I don't really like the charred jacket, but whatever.
I thought it was kind of cool seeing the jacket bubble a little bit from time to time.
But again, that didn't happen in the first movie.
No,
His
not at all.
jacket stayed the same.
Yeah.
But yeah, he shows up. They're all just like staring at him, and eventually, the dude Kerrigan or whatever his name is, I can't remember. Yeah, Kerrigan says to kill him or something like that, and then everybody starts shooting him. And he whips out his chain, and now apparently he has the power to disintegrate people, which he never had in the first movie. He did like disintegrate a couple like demons. You know, remember they had like those possessed guys in the first movie that were different elements, and he could make them disappear. But now he apparently just does it with reckless abandon to normal people.
Yep. Yeah. When it's convenient to the fight.
When it's convenient. And I don't remember the context of this fight or this line, but at some point his character says, oh no, I do remember the context. So Kerrigan gets a grenade launcher and blasts him
at the quarry.
And blasts him with a grenade launcher after he's killed like 10 of his guys. And the grenade launcher hits him in the chest and knocks him way back and blows up. And seemingly Ghost Rider goes unconscious at this point. And Kerrigan says, get some. And then drives away. So that was a fun line.
Yeah, there's some really bad lines.
There's some really bad lines. I have more.
There's like the did it hurt line or did that hurt line? Like it's just, oh man, there's some bad ones.
Yeah, my next note is they did not do his hair any favors in this movie, which I love you, Nick, more than most people. But in this movie, they did you dirty, my friend. And then there's another line, you're the devil's baby mama. That is a line uttered by Nick Cage in this movie. So
it's almost as awkward as when Nick tries to tussle Danny's hair in the restaurant.
Yes, I have on that note later on in that he's very touchy-feely. Johnny Blaze is very touchy-feely in this movie. Yeah, so then they go through the explanation of how the devil can take different forms to explain why this is a different actor than the first movie. And at one point they show Jerry Springer.
Yeah, he was the devil apparently.
I guess at one point he was the devil.
Though my problem with that is seemingly the devil like uses up a body and then moves on. Right. But like Jerry Springer's was still alive. Like he's alive. So
yeah. Again, not a lot that makes sense in this movie. Then he's just like talking to people about the Ghost Rider, and everybody is so casual about it. Like there's a demon that's head is a flaming skull and can whip people and disintegrate them, but everybody just casually talks about this like it's nobody's amazed by it. It's just like a thing that happens on Tuesdays or something.
Even Kerrigan, he's not amazed, he's annoyed. He wants more money, but he's not like, oh my god, this dude's head's on fire.
He's not like, I'm not going to do this job because there's a demon from hell that's coming after me. I'm going to do this job and ask for another bit of money.
Yeah.
As if anyway, yeah, and then Johnny Blaze wakes up in the hospital from the grenade, which is weird, and then starts hitting on the nurse. Immediately after waking up. And it's very uncomfortable.
How do you think he got to the hospital? Do you think that Nadia brings him to the hospital?
I mean, that's a really good question because she acts like she doesn't know who he is right after that.
Right? Okay.
So I'm assuming it's not her, that an ambulance was randomly driving through the quarry and found him.
As luck would have it.
As it does. So then they're looking for the boy because the Kerrigan has taken the child during this quarry scuffle after knocking Ghost Rider unconscious with a grenade. And they're looking, him and the girl are looking for Nadia. Are looking for the boy. And so they find out that the boy is, or Nadia knows this guy who works at an underground fighting pit, apparently. And
A
so she
really
says,
fancy one.
a really fancy one. And she says, oh, if we go ask this guy, he'll know where they are. Okay, just like for plot convenience. So they go and interrogate this guy, and they let Nick go full Cage. And it's one of the most beautiful things I've ever seen in my life. If I was going to take something from this movie as a positive, that scene is the shining moment for me.
Oh yeah, it's my favorite scene in the movie.
Basically, the context of the scene is that they're interrogating this guy, and he's essentially, it's said that he can't control the rider, but he's basically going like bone skull to normal human skull, the whole, like he has like a bone
Parts of his
eye
face,
that like
yeah.
yeah, that's something that these directors really like to do, is like make faces metamorph a little bit, because even at one point the devil's face starts doing that, and
Mm-hmm.
they really like that. But yeah, one of his eyes keeps like blacking out, and he's clearly trying to control the rider from coming out, because the rider's hungry. The rider's always hungry in this movie. He was never hungry in the first one, but
Well, it's even worse because this guy's, he's a total like criminal slime ball type, and so
right.
the writer really wants that soul.
Yeah, because that's more filling, I guess.
Apparently, I don't know.
But yeah, so he's constantly fighting, and the girl with this like impulse to have the devil come out of him, and the girl is going through his cell phone, I guess, and looking at texts.
Mm-hmm.
And then at some point they shove the cell phone in his mouth.
Yeah.
And they find out where they're supposed to be going. Mm-hmm. Needless to say. But yeah, it's a great scene. If it's available on YouTube, you should look it up, because if you're a fan of Cage, he really goes full Cage. It was beautiful. Then we get the Evil Dead shit. The first scene of the Evil Dead shit, which, in all fairness, there was some Evil Dead shit in the first one too. Mainly the scene where he's transforming into the Ghost Rider in the train station for like the first time.
Mm-hmm.
He was kind of channeling Bruce Campbell in the scene where he has to cut his own hand off in Evil Dead 2. During that scene, like with the laughing because you're in pain and that whole thing. Right. Well, then in this movie, there's some very similar like shots where he's like riding the motorcycle and his head's like moving all fast and he's laughing, and it's clearly painful, but he's still laughing. And so that they do a lot of Evil Dead homages in this movie, which were actually done pretty well. I don't really like the way that they were handled in the movie, but you could clearly tell what they were going for.
Yeah, I don't like that sped up look that they're going with. Just let Cage do his thing and move on,
you know? I mean, they did do that in Evil Dead. In the Raimi movies, maybe not quite as severe. Yeah, they didn't abuse it as much as they did in this movie.
Yeah.
And then they find the kid super easily. Like the next scene is them untying the kid. So
with Cage still having the rider more or less under control.
Right. Yeah, for now. But then the rider comes out again and starts disintegrating people. At one point, he gets a grenade. I don't know if he kills the guy and then the grenade drops at his feet or something like that, but the grenade blows up. And then he's just kind of floating in midair on his side, like it's hard to describe, but he's basically like parallel to the ground.
Yeah, he's just floating.
And then he just starts spinning. So he's still saying parallel to the ground. And then he starts fighting more people. It's a very weird scene. And
so it's like I don't know, there's like a mining thing going on there, and these guys are doing a weapons deal.
Quarry.
Yeah, and like a much larger quarry, and there's like a weapons deal going on. This dude has a freaking rocket launcher.
Yeah, they're doing a weapons deal, and the guy Kerrigan is trying to buy 4 bunker buster missile launchers, essentially,
to fight the rider.
Right. Yes, and they ask him, "Oh, how many guys are you up against?" And he's like, 1. Okay. So yeah, then the Ghost Rider shows up and he does all that spinning stuff. And then at one point he goes up to a guy and just stares at him again. And the guy just starts emptying a machine gun into his mouth, because that's apparently where you shoot a demon. I don't really know, but he just empties a full clip into this guy's mouth, and into the Ghost Rider's mouth. And then the Ghost Rider just starts spitting bullets back at him.
It does kind of beg the question of like, why was Johnny Blaze's body injured after the first attack, like when he can clearly eat bullets?
Well, not only can he clearly eat bullets, my next note, actually, now that you bring that up, is one grenade fucked him up, but a bunker buster missile is fine because
Totally fine.
they shoot him with this missile and he gets taken up into the air and then brought down into the ground and blown up with this missile. And then he just like casually strolls out.
He's completely fine.
Completely fine, goes into like a giant, I don't know, it's not a crane. I called it a crane, but it's some sort of industrial mining machinery.
Yeah, I'm sure there's a name for it.
There that, he lights on fire Ghost Rider style and starts killing people with it. Yeah, starts blowing stuff up. At this point in the movie, I turned to the person I was watching this with and reminded her that one time in the comic books, there was a what if comic book where they said, what if Professor Xavier was the Ghost Rider? And he did have a flaming wheelchair in that. So that is a real thing.
Yeah. I mean,
you're
that's how I've always understood the power. It was just kind of silly because, again, it was another example of like his powers will disintegrate people when it's convenient.
Yeah.
And then it won't when it's not convenient for it to happen. Like that just happens. Like, why doesn't he just dust Kerrigan?
That's like my next note is, so now he can turn anything into a Ghost Rider vehicle, which is not really something that could be done in the first movie. You basically picked a vehicle and that vehicle was tied to you. Like Sam Elliott's character had the horse, which isn't really a vehicle. It's like a living creature. So that's a little odd, but it was just very cool. Thing
you can ride.
Yeah. And then the motorcycle for Ghost Rider. But yeah, he turned that thing into a Ghost Rider vehicle. And yeah, my next note is, why didn't he kill boyfriend guy? Because apparently Nadia, I don't think we talked about it, Nadia and Kerrigan were dating at one point. But he picks up Kerrigan. This is another example of the Ghost Rider being hungry and not actually doing anything about it, because he stares at Kerrigan for a very long time and then realizes that Nadia is there and goes after her, and he just throws Kerrigan to the side, apparently.
Well, he wants Danny. But again, it's still really unclear.
No, he wants to go after her because he says earlier that she needs to get far away when he's the Ghost Rider because she's got as many stains on her soul.
But why would he drop Kerrigan to go after her? They're both bad, right? So why wouldn't he finish off Kerrigan?
Maybe she's worse. I mean, at this point, we don't really know any of her history. We know she's a thief and everything else. I don't think anything in this movie makes sense. So I think trying to find logic in it is just asinine.
All right, fair enough.
But yeah, maybe he was going after Danny. In any case, he throws the main bad guy to the side and goes after the girl that's been helping him and her son. And as he walks to the son, he basically loses his Ghost Rider form. Like the kid keeps him turns him back somehow. And at this point, we still don't really know. Well, we do, I guess. We know that he's the son of the devil because they have that talk with the devil baby mama.
Right.
So, yeah. And so, yeah, at this point, I had, does Ghost Rider ever eat people? Because he's always hungry and he never eats anything. But referencing the boyfriend thing. And then we get a scene with them like at a diner going through the plan. And we get about a minute and a half of Nick Cage just drinking water from a large like pitcher.
Yeah, he's hot. He's been on fire.
Yeah, and they did that in the first one too. So that was kind of a reference to the first one. But on the first one, it was the water like started steaming when he drank it and like evaporated. In this one, he just drank a lot of water. They also didn't have the jelly beans that were such a huge deal in the first one.
Yeah, the jelly beans.
Yeah. Yeah, so, but it's way too much time spent on water drinking in the scene, and that's never touched on again. Like, he's really thirsty right now, but he's never thirsty any other time in the movie.
No.
Except when he drinks a little bit of wine later, I guess. I don't know. And so then the devil shows up at the quarry site where that big fight happened, and he finds Kerrigan, and he gives him... Well, Kerrigan dies in front of him because somehow he got trapped under a rock. We don't really know how. I mean, Ghost Rider just kind of threw him to the side, but apparently threw him hard enough to collapse a wall on top of him or something. And he dies. And the devil says, oh, it's not your time yet. And he gives him DK powers. I don't know if that's the character name in the comics or what, but
it reminded me of some like Captain Planet villain.
Right, and he can decay anything he touches, basically.
Which, by the way, his ability to control that power or not is wildly inconsistent and
that
unclear.
is a note I definitely have later in the movie. Yeah, it's very weird. But yeah, he has super nice hair. He looks like a zombie, like a decaying zombie, but his hair is beautiful. Beautiful blonde, long hair. And, for a guy with decay powers, you wouldn't think that that would be the case. But, he's going against the stereotype.
I don't know why his hair changed.
Yeah, his hair changed. It's nice and long and blonde. I'm guessing that there's a comic book character with long blonde hair named Decay that they were modeling it after, and they just wanted him to kind of look like him. But yeah, it was very weird. So then we get like a nice conversation between Johnny Blaze and Danny sitting on the back of a tow truck while it's driving with this bike on the back, but they're just like hanging out.
Flying down the highway.
Well, it's implied that they're flying, but like if you actually look when they're like a side shot, you can see that they're going like 5 miles an hour.
Well, right, because they have like a 12-year-old sitting on the back of the
right,
truck.
But I mean, maybe we should just not encourage people to ride on the back of open bed trucks. That would probably have been better. But yeah, so then we get to see the scene from the trailer, which I thought was just in the trailer, but it's an actual scene in the movie of him peeing flame, talking about the penis flamethrower or whatever.
We get that twice, by the way.
Yes, we get that a second time. Lucky us.
Yeah, that's great.
So yeah, like basically they're having a conversation about the rider and like a serious conversation. And then it cuts to a black void, which a lot of this movie, there's a lot of the action scenes where it's just two people fighting in a black void. It's a very weird thing. And
it seems like it's supposed to be a power that Kerrigan gets as the decay guy. Because he can instigate.
Yeah, but Decay isn't there at this point, so he wouldn't have anything to do with this.
But
it just shows him in the blackness peeing in the flame.
Oh, right. Sorry.
Yeah. But yeah, so that was terrible.
Yeah, it was bad.
Really bad. And then they're driving like 5 miles per hour. And then Nick Cage, Johnny Blaze is like, want to have some fun with the kid? And the kid's like, yeah. And they get on the bike and no helmets and doing like wheelies and stoppies and, all these crazy stunts. And at some point, what's his name? Moreau shows up and he's also doing stuff on his bike with them.
And the mom thinks it's just hilarious.
The mom thinks she loves it.
Yeah.
She's like, please keep doing tricks with my kid on the bike that I love so much. Like, I can understand Ghost Rider not wearing a helmet because he's like an undead demon or whatever, but a kid is still a kid, even if he's the son of the devil. He's not immortal. At least there's nothing saying he is.
Could you imagine if that's how the movie ends? The kid just falls off the bike and dies?
Yeah, it'd be depressing. But yeah, it was a really weird scene. Like a lot of other scenes in this movie. Very mixed tone.
Well, they're still being hunted.
Right. Yeah, They make sure in that diner scene, he made sure to say, well, we have to keep moving and we have to do it quickly. And then they drink water for 10 minutes, but priorities.
Tricks down the road.
Yeah. So then Kerrigan is chasing them, he's trying to find them. He's hunting them down or whatever.
Yeah.
And he kills an ambulance driver and steals the ambulance. And he's going through all the food in this guy's lunchbox. And he touches like an apple and it decays, and like a sandwich and it decays, and then he picks up a Twinkie, and guess what? Joke's on you, hostess, it doesn't decay. It's also a joke from Zombieland when saying that Twinkies would still be around, but instead of eating it like a normal human being, he puts the whole wrapper into his mouth and like closes his mouth on the wrapper and then just like squeezes it out like a push pop or something into his mouth. So my next note was, who eats a Twinkie like that? And if there's a vocal group of people that eat Twinkies like that out there, please let us know, because maybe I've been doing it wrong my whole life. But it was just a really disgusting, it's a really disgusting way of eating a Twinkie.
And that whole scene lends to the confusion around, does he control his decay powers or not? Because the ambulance is fine.
Yeah, exactly. He's driving the ambulance. It's not decaying. But then when he gets out of the ambulance, okay, so spoiler alert, at some point he gets the kid again. And he shows up to the devil to deliver the kid, and the ambulance is fine. But when he reaches out, he for some reason everybody wants to touch everybody in this movie, and so he reaches out to like pat the devil on the shoulder, like a joking pat, and the devil says, "Don't touch me," which implied to me that he can't control his powers and he doesn't want to be decayed. But then there's a couple scenes where he seems to control it, where he can like decay people slower or faster. It's
I mean the climax fight between him and Johnny makes it very clear he can control them at that point.
Yeah.
But up until then, it's just very inconsistent.
Yeah, so that part was jumping ahead a little bit. So, at this point, they have the boy, the Nick Cage and Nadia and Moreau have the boy. And they're heading to this unknown place that's safe. Like it's seemingly a monastery or something like that Moreau has been talking about that'll be safe for him. And they get there, and it's basically Tatooine. They go from like a desert to like a weird like alien village.
It actually reminded me more of Dark Crystal.
Yeah, like it's completely. They're in the Arizona desert. It looks like on the highway when they're doing all these stunts and everything, and then they end up in like if Tatooine had a bunch of like green vegetation growing on the buildings and stuff. That's what it looked like to me. Or like Mos Eisley, if it had green stuff, plants growing on stuff. It was very weird, very jarring and different. Like it doesn't even look like they're on the same planet. And then bunch of monks show up that have tattoos all over their faces. And as soon as one of them starts talking, you discover that one of them is Raiden from Mortal Kombat.
I didn't actually notice.
What? You didn't hear that voice and go, "Oh my God, that is 100% Raiden from Mortal Kombat."
I think I was too distracted. This movie is very distracting.
It is very distracting. I don't know the actor's name. Oh, it's Christopher Lambert is the actor, I'm pretty sure. Yeah. But yeah, he was Raiden in the Mortal Kombat movies. He talked like that.
Yeah.
That was like a whitewashed Raiden. But that's what I know him from. So it was he has a very specific voice. But
fun fact, supposedly the tattoos took so long that he just kept them on day and night because he didn't want to have them redo it each day.
Well, he was in like 6 minutes of the movie, so I imagine he was probably only there for 2 days. So, I mean, that's not really that big of a thing.
What I read wasn't particularly clear on that, but it was multiple days at least.
Yeah, so then my next note is Idris's French accent is very distracting, which we talked about already.
Like I said, distracting movie.
Then we get some there's some exposition as to the Ghost Rider, right, and what it is, because he's delivered the boy, so now he's supposed to get his curse removed, and Moreau is going to do this, but before he does it, Johnny he calls him John, which I also found very distracting. Moreau calls him John instead of Johnny, but he goes through there's some cutscenes, very Mandy-esque cutscenes of like animated stuff. Showing that there's a spirit of justice and a spirit of vengeance, and it's like I don't know if it was two angels. It was a little unclear.
It's the same angel. So the spirit of justice became fallen and became the spirit of vengeance. So basically, spirit of justice was kidnapped down in hell and tortured, and then the whole concept of justice was perverted into vengeance.
Apparently it was very clear to you. It was not that clear to me, but
because honestly, that was one of the more interesting parts of the movie.
Right. And from that, he's like, "Oh, is the spirit of justice still in me?" And Moreau's like, I don't know. Can you feel it?
Foreshadowing.
Yeah, I mean, at this point, that the spirit of justice is going to show up. But,
you would think.
I mean, it kind of does.
Kind of.
So then they take communion, I guess. He, hands him a piece of bread and says the body of Christ. And he's got all this wine that's 2,000 years old. And
Johnny's insulting the bread for some reason. I'm like, this dude's doing you a favor.
Right.
What do you care?
And this whole thing is kind of a weird Jesus allegory, because then he sends him into this. He says, "I can't go with you past this point," and sends him in to this other room where a stone tomb closes, just like it did, with Jesus when he was buried and risen 3 days later, if you believe in that kind of thing. But
yeah, I mean, it takes a hard turn into Catholicism type stuff pretty quickly here.
My next note was, is this a Jesus allegory? And I mean, kind of.
Sort of, I mean, the wine is supposed to be from the time of genius.
It's literally supposed to be like disciple wine,
right? I mean,
but then then we get another Evil Dead scene where he's like floating through the air and vomiting chains, and apparently when he wakes up he runs outside and he says, you did it, Moreau, you did it. And so now he doesn't have the spirit anymore, I guess, but nobody's around. And then it's revealed that the monks are going to kill the boy. They're going to chop his head off, apparently, because he's the Antichrist.
And then this breaks the narrative up into this point, because there's this whole narrative around, well, it has to be the ceremony has to be done by this particular time on this particular day, or it can't happen. But then the monks are like, yeah, but we're going to kill him anyway.
Right. Well, so then the monks are like using pressure points on people. It's really weird. All of a sudden
they're martial arts experts.
Like they're European style monks. Like they're white guys. They're not like Shaolin monks or something like that. But then they also do like pressure point martial arts of some kind to keep, like, they can instantly knock somebody out just by touching a spot on their neck, and, you know, can control Johnny Blaze by just like touching him. Mm-hmm. So it's very weird. So then we get into the scene where they're going to sacrifice the boy. And right as the sword, literally like a scimitar type sword, is in the air and ready to chop the boy's head off, the screen goes black again.
Mm-hmm. That's the part I was talking about.
Yeah, I guess it's a decay power. I don't really know, but that guy shows up and starts decaying everybody at varying rates of speed. Some people he does it really fast, some people he does it really slow, and it's a sword. It takes a certain amount of time. But whatever, he kills everybody, basically.
Again, because like instead of the monks just killing the kid and being done with it, there has to be a whole ceremony around it. Why? What does the ceremony do? It's still a human body.
Right. And so then Moreau, Johnny Blaze, and Nadia all come out and see what's happened, and the boy is gone. And then the scene with the boy and the one we already talked about with him and the devil happened. But
I will say some of the statues of, like, they're like petrified at this point, did look kind of cool. There's
they did
props that were nice.
So yes, that was cool. And they had like mushrooms and stuff growing on them, which I thought was neat. Neat part of the decay power they could have done something with later and didn't. But so this was a really weird scene when you get the three of them all together in this area where all these statues are, essentially all these decayed people, because I don't know if you noticed this, but every shot of a person in that scene when they were having a conversation was a single shot, like an individual shot. You never saw Nick Cage together with Idris Elba. You never saw Idris Elba with Nadia's actress. You never see them together. Like you might see a tiny bit of shoulder with jacket or something, but that's all you see. So I feel like this conversation was changed in editing or something happened there, because I don't think all three of these actors were on set together during this. It was a weird
interesting
scene.
I did not notice that. I think like the cinematography across the board was just very distracting. So I think that was probably a fairly normal thing that my brain just didn't pick up on.
Yeah, I don't know why it stood out to me, but it was really weird. I kept wondering why these people aren't shown together. In my mind, it was like, well, if it was COVID or something, they weren't on set at the same time. But obviously, this was way before COVID.
Right.
So that wasn't really
reshoots, though.
It probably was. I feel like there was some weird stuff, pickup shots later on. But okay. So then we get the scene with the van not rusting when he touches it. I did make a note in here that one of the positives of this movie was I thought the way the color grading was done was really interesting. There was some really dynamic colors, kind of similar to what they did in Mandy. The usage of colors wasn't probably as meaningful as it was in Mandy, but I thought it was definitely interesting in this movie, and whoever was in charge of that did a really good job with it. And then we got the second scene of him peeing fire, because the devil is talking to the boy and telling him that he's like his mortal, I don't know, storage unit or something. Mm-hmm. And he's talking about the rider and his flamethrower, which apparently is his penis, but again, unnecessarily. But at this scene, that devil actor, I'm not familiar with him.
Yes, Sirion Hins.
He was really creepy in this scene.
I thought he was fine in the whole movie, frankly. I don't really know him from much. He's not really in a lot of things that I would watch, but I thought he was one of the better parts of the movie.
He was fine in the rest of the scenes, but this scene made me really go, oh, that guy is weird, creepy. He's doing a good job. So,
I did like the flamethrower analogy because he was talking about his body when he takes on a human body. He's like a flamethrower. He says made out of paper mache. And I like that. He's like using up that body whenever he uses any powers or abilities, right? So that's why his face is all messed up because he gave the decay power to Kerrigan. And I just thought that was a good analogy.
It was a good analogy, but again, I don't need it to be a flamethrower to be his penis, the Ghost Rider's penis.
I mean, that's fair.
I mean,
Apparently he played Dumbledore in Deathly Hallows.
Nice.
So there you go. Yeah, so in 2011, he did Harry Potter, Tinker Tailor Soldier Spy in this.
So then he drugs the kid. My next note was drugging children. He injects him in the neck and makes him sleepy, which is questionable at best.
Yeah.
So and apparently it's to do the ceremony that night, which I still don't really know what the ceremony was supposed to do. But
it's supposed to move the soul of the devil into the kid's body.
Okay, so he's trying to take over the kid's body.
Yeah.
So he had to do the ceremony with Jerry Springer at one point?
Supposedly.
Okay. So there's like this...
He got to do it as Jerry Springer too.
Yeah. So there's like this temple, and you get like an overhead shot where it's like a bunch of ruins kind of leading up to a temple where they're like a ruined temple that they're going to do the ceremony. And then we get a shot of
which, by the way, is supposedly the place on Earth that is farthest from heaven. I don't know how the hell that works.
Yeah, I don't either. But it's like just a bunch of ruins, and you see our three main characters kind of heading towards it. But then they start climbing, and it's shown they're just climbing a ruin. It's implied that this is a pretty tall ruin.
Mm-hmm.
They're just going to the top of this ruin that is not connected at all to the temple. It's just like a decrepit building a mile away from the temple. And they're all climbing to the top of this for some reason. And I mean, they look at the temple with binoculars. So I guess that's why, but it seems like a really unnecessary climb. It's not like in the forest or anything. It's a wide open field with a bunch of ruins. It was did you notice that too?
Yeah, it seems silly. It seems silly, but I mean, I have no idea why they did it.
Yeah, and then I have my note that Johnny is very touchy-feely in this movie, which is a little weird. He was not that way in the first movie.
But to your point, everybody's kind of touchy-feely in this movie.
Yeah, and maybe that's something with the director. I never saw Crank, so I don't really know if the directors just want everybody to be touchy-feely or what. But so then Moreau and Johnny Blaze go into the temple to attempt to like get the kid, and the mom, Nadja, is just sitting like a mile away with a sniper rifle, just casually picking dudes off with a thermal scope on a like high-end sniper rifle.
I guess that's why they climbed up over there, because she's one of the best snipers in the world.
Apparently she's like military trained. I don't know. None of this is ever said in the movie. The only thing they ever really say is that she dated Kerrigan, who is a gun runner.
Right.
So I can understand some familiarity with firearms, but that doesn't make you an amazing shot at a long distance and using like thermal imaging technology and things like that.
Well, because we did skip the part where at this monastery, now everybody's dead. All the monks are dead. But they have this room that's got like more guns than like a John Wick film.
Yes. And they're like, we're going to need guns.
And so she like goes up and she finds this sniper rifle and she's very excited about it.
She finds the sniper rifle and she's like instantly able to like clear the chamber and do all this stuff with it. And I was actually okay with that, because
yeah, that part's fine.
If she's dating a gun runner, she probably has like, messed with guns before. But being a person that can do one shot, one kill multiple times and be okay with that and not like feel any remorse for murdering people, whatever. I mean, at most, we knew she was a petty thief before this, pulling scams with her son.
Right. I mean, that's the big problem, is like we just don't get her resume at all.
Yeah.
Because this is like some amazing marksmanship that she shows.
Really, really good. Yeah, the army would want to speak to her. So yeah, casual mom murder was my next note. And then when they Ghost Rider and Moreau are in there, and they're...
Well, it's important to note he's not Ghost Rider anymore.
No, he's not. He lost the power,
yeah,
but he's Johnny.
Powers. Yeah.
But yeah, they're just hanging out, and they just killed a couple dudes. Now they're just hanging out next to a wall, and they uncork a thing of 2,000-year-old wine that Moreau has been saving, I guess. Mm-hmm. And he tries it, and there's like a pause, and he says it's not bad, and then he hands it to Johnny, and Johnny drinks it and said it might be good on a salad, which
was
Do
gross.
people put wine on salad?
I think the idea was like because it's so old, it's like a vinaigrette kind of chunky.
But then
Maybe
I guess, but then
it
Moreau
was
takes
gross.
it and he drinks some more and he
Hmm.
goes up to these other two guys and throws the bottle of wine to one of them, not at them, to
Hmm.
them,
Yeah.
and then shoots the guy and the wine bottle falls and breaks and he says, "Oh, that's perfect. That's a waste of perfectly good wine," or something like that.
Well, he
So I guess it
is.
wasn't that bad.
Well, he's portrayed as possibly being an alcoholic,
Yeah, he seems like he has a dependency issue
right?
potentially.
Yeah, he's drinking through most of the movie.
Yeah.
Or
So
when
that
he's not drinking, he's talking about
drinking.
wine.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So then the devil and Danny are on the stage of this, ruined amphitheater doing the
Mhm.
ceremony with a bunch of monks out there. And Johnny Blaze just runs out and punches the devil in the face and it
Clocks him.
works.
It was great. It was so
And
great.
it works.
This totally regular human just punches the devil in the
Yeah,
face.
and it's totally okay. So yeah, that happens. And then Decay shows up and starts decaying people, and Moreau starts unloading again, just like machine gunning down this whole room of monks.
Mm-hmm.
And Decay shows up and starts decaying him, and he holds on long enough to headbutt Decay in the face with his skull, which explodes into dust as he headbutts Decay in the face.
Yeah, and he gets some in his mouth, and Decay's like, "Well, that was gross," or something
Yeah.
like that. Yeah,
And so then like the
gotta be
monks
quippy.
catch Johnny and they're like, and he's like, we're gonna kill the kid or kill Johnny. And then the kid's like, wait, if I have all the powers as you, does that mean I have all the same powers as you? And the devil's like, yeah. And then the kid's like, turns and looks at looks at Ghost Rider and just like starts vomiting fire, jumps onto his like shoulders
Mm-hmm.
and starts vomiting fire into his face
Mm-hmm.
for a long, long time.
For a long time.
And all these monks around are just watching this. They're totally okay with it. And they're like, oh, and then he gets up and starts like screaming and grabbing his face. And the monk's like, oh, it's okay. His face is just on fire. And
this was also the scene, by the way, where Kerrigan can show that he can control the decay because he's got Johnny's face and he's like drawing decay lines that fade and stuff on his face, which I thought that was kind of cool.
Right, but if he can control it, then they need to be clear
yes,
that he can control it.
Yeah.
But
it shouldn't be an hour and 20 minutes into the movie. We're like, oh, okay.
Yeah. And so we get another chase, I think, at this point. Or somebody gets knocked out of a car. And I remember there was a Wilhelm scream right then.
Well, the devil runs away.
Right. Oh, that's what happens. Yeah. The devil runs away. And then there's a Wilhelm scream, which always stands out to me when I hear it. So that was fun.
He's got Danny. That's important to know.
He's got Danny. And then the Ghost Rider catches up to him because he's a Ghost Rider now. And apparently his chain is animated now. Like his chain has, like the cape in Doctor Strange is sentient and can
yeah.
Because it rises up like a snake and starts doing stuff, but
it's a pre-end title.
Yeah, it's very weird. And so then there's a big fight scene that's happening while cars are driving.
Yeah,
and Ghost Rider,
Kerrigan,
Ghost Rider and DK are fighting on the hood of the car that Nadia's driving. And he
because decays the windshield, which you can't do because it's glass,
right?
Whatever.
Which in this case just means it cracks, and he punches through it. But in any case, the Ghost Rider successfully penance stares him at this point, it seems, and throws him into the road, and he gets run over. And then Ghost Rider says, "Roadkill."
Yeah, I don't know why that kills Kerrigan, but it does.
Well, the penance stare is supposed to kill people.
The penance, that's what killed him? Okay.
I assume so. I mean, in the first movie, that's what did it.
Yeah, but it was unclear when the stare was done.
Well, he was holding him and staring at him and then throw him into the road. So I assume that's what happened. But again, it's very unclear. And then, so at this point, during the chase, he at one point took over a military vehicle.
Yeah. The truck.
And made it a Ghost Rider vehicle again. And then he gets in this fight with Kerrigan and kills him. And then this is where the powers started getting weird for me, because then the motorcycle comes back up on fire and catches up to him. So, because at some point he left the motorcycle way behind, presumably crashed on the road somewhere. Well, he took over the Humvee or whatever it was, and then he gets the motorcycle back. So yeah, that's where things start getting a little wonky for me with the vehicle possession, because why not just get that crane and start knocking everybody off the road that way? But whatever. If that's like the smallest of plot holes in this movie. And so then he stops the devil and like wrecks his vehicle and grabs him with his chain and says something like, "Go home," or something like that.
He says, "Go
and
home."
slams him into the ground, which opens up and swallows him. So apparently hell is literally in the earth.
Yes.
In this. It's not like an alternate dimension. It's
No,
a
it's like
physical place. It's like a physical place in the center of the earth.
Right.
Somewhere.
And heaven is a physical place above the earth.
Apparently. It's in the clouds, even though, planes can go there, but whatever.
It's above the planes, Ryan. Okay.
Yeah. Okay. Oh, okay. But below space?
There is no space.
Okay. Well, that makes sense. Yeah. So that was my next note, is hell is literally inside the earth.
Literally.
At this point. And he's very easy to beat. The devil, all he did was grab him with the chain and slam him into the earth and say, "Go home." And that was it. That devil's very easy to beat. He should have just done that from the beginning. But then we get like a weird touchdown dance because Johnny's happy that he beat him, I guess.
Mm-hmm.
And now the Ghost Rider is totally okay with Nadia, not trying to pendant stare her soul, not hungry anymore, apparently.
Well, because he's not the spirit of vengeance anymore.
Yes, he is, because he still has the orange flame.
For the moment.
So, so he was going to go, he doesn't go after Nadia, even though he's been after her several times during this whole thing. But then we get, so I had a theory early on in this movie that he was wearing gloves because CGIing hands is very difficult.
Yes.
Especially like skeleton hands.
Uh-huh.
And they didn't want to do that. So he's wearing gloves this whole movie. Well, at this point, he's not wearing gloves. And so I was instantly suspicious. And then you get that bone hand like coming on the screen. Bad. And it looks like somebody cut it out of construction paper. And like bad. Held it up into the screen. It's really bad.
It's huge. By the
and
way.
Then, yes, it's very the scale is totally weird. Everything about it is weird. And then the flame turns to blue. And he says,
"Feel it.
Hell yes." And then it shows his face is now blue flame also. But yeah, that's the end of the movie. And then written by David Goyer popped up and everything made sense.
The stories by him. I don't know that he really had much to do with the screenplay, but dude's been involved in a lot of stuff.
Some better than others.
That's true. But that's it. And what's really awful at the end of this movie is that the potential of what they could do with the spirit of justice concept is kind of a cool idea. And then it obviously doesn't go anywhere. So There's this huge buildup to the spirit of justice, and then it's over.
Yeah. And did you notice there was no Marvel logo before the beginning of the movie?
No, well, they did the Marvel Knights.
Yeah, they just had the words Marvel Knights pop up. But even on like the old Fantastic Four and Spider-Man
movies. I thought they did
a
comic book thing before it.
Did they?
I'm pretty sure.
Okay, maybe they did.
Yeah.
I don't know. I thought it was weird.
I think it was just to do an alternate, because back then the idea was like they wanted the R-rated movies separated.
This was rated R?
Was it PG-13?
It did not feel like an R-rated movie.
It is PG-13, you're right. The Marvel Knights were supposed to be like a more adult thing.
Yeah, but this was more adult too, but it definitely was not for kids.
Yeah.
But yeah.
But that's it. That's the movie.
Yeah.
It wasn't as bad as I thought it was going to be, but it's certainly not good. It's certainly a bad movie, but I think like it had just been built up as being like the worst thing imaginable, that it was like,
oh no, I feel like it was better than like Rise of the Silver Surfer, Fantastic Four, and some of those other really bad Marvel movies from this era. X3, It was, well, I don't know if it was better than X3, but X3 was pretty bad, but
X3 is bad.
I don't know. It was not good. It was like I said, I know the first one was a bad movie, but it was one of those movies they were really trying to make a good movie, and you could tell, and it was just so cheesy and bad that it actually ended up being enjoyable. This movie was not that.
Yeah. Apparently Peter Fonda, who played, the devil in the first movie, he was offered the role, and after reading the first few pages of the script was like, no.
Smart move. He was a highlight of the first movie for sure.
Oh man. And like, there's some disappointment stuff here too. Like, I thought that Idris was going to play another rider because in the first movie you had Sam Elliott as a different rider, and so I was like, oh, that might be kind of cool. Like Idris and Cage together, like on fire and stuff. And obviously that doesn't happen, so that was a bummer.
Right.
I
thought he was going to play Blade.
Oh
man, Blade was in the Marvel Knights.
Yeah,
but yeah. It turns out no.
When was Blade Trinity? When was the last Blade movie?
I don't know.
Yeah,
I have no idea.
But yeah, just like Idris is just totally wasted in this movie.
I thought he was just going to be Blade because as soon as Marvel Knights popped up and he was the first character you see, that I was like, okay, this has got to be Blade.
That's a good guess. That did not cross my mind. I think because of the French accent.
Right. Well, you didn't hear the French accent until, a few minutes in. I'm talking about when I just like first saw him because he had like kind of a tactical vest and a jacket look, kind of like Blade does. I don't know. He would be a great Blade.
No, he would. And that would have worked timing wise because it was 2004 for Blade Trinity, so there was a nice gap. They could have done a reboot of the character very easily there, but nope, didn't get that either.
No, because they killed off the character in the movie too. So yeah. Anyway, we got to rate this thing.
Yeah. So the way we do this, of course, is we have our Cage-O-meter where we rank or rate our Nicolas Cage movies on a scale of quality, 0 through 20, 20 high, and caginess, again, 0 through 20, 20 high. So Ryan, from a quality standpoint, where would you rate Ghost Rider Spirit of Vengeance?
Like we've gone over a bit in this, there were things I did like about this movie, but majority of things I did not like about this movie. Mm-hmm. So I'm maybe a 5 or a 6 on this because it's better than I enjoyed this movie more than like The Cotton Club, for example, or Zandali or Dog Eat Dog.
I mean, you gave The Cotton Club an 8.
Did I? I think that was because Cotton Club is objectively a better movie.
Yeah. Okay. Well, I mean,
I'm aware of that.
You gave Next and Dying of the Light a 6, both of those.
Yeah, I'd say that this is probably a 5 then.
Okay. So
I think this is worse than those movies.
Fair enough. No, that's good. A 5. I'm in a similar boat as well. I think I'm also going to give it a 5 because I also gave Dying of the Light a 6 and I actually gave Next a 7. So I'm going to go with a 5 as well. And then we have our caginess. Now, there's definitely some good caginess stuff in here, right? There's the scene, the interrogation scene is great. There's some of the riding scenes that are great. So I got to kind of give it up there a little bit, but I don't want to go too crazy. So I'm being a little cagey in a different way here with my answer. But I'm thinking maybe like a 15.
Yeah, I was thinking about like a 14. So I think we're in a similar.
All right. So 14 and a half for caginess. Now, this is our 20th movie. So Ryan and I are actually going to go back and look at our scores for the previous 19 and maybe do a few adjustments because in some cases we didn't really know where the floor was.
I'll say more that Derreck didn't know where the floor was because he immediately went to one of the first bad movies we watched. Was like, that's a 1. Nothing could be worse than this.
No. Zondali was episode 13, man. All right. 13.
And he didn't think anything would be worse than that movie. But turns out there are things worse than that movie, debatably.
Yeah. But there you go. So we'll adjust those a little bit and we'll post our Cage-O-meter on our website and things of that nature. So next we just got to figure out what movie joins the Wheel O Cage. And so what we basically do each episode, we spin a wheel and we decide what movie we're going to talk about based on that. We have to add something to the wheel now that this movie is off of it. So we will be adding The Trust to the wheel. So if you want to find out which Nicolas Cage movie we're talking about next, watch the latest Wheel O Cage. You can go to comingofcage.com or follow us at Coming of Cage to find that out. Ryan, any last notes?
I will never watch this movie again. God willing.
Yeah, I mean, I really hope to never see this again. I'm with you in that boat. So there you have it. Ghost Rider Spirit of Vengeance. We're the Coming of Cage podcast. I'm Derek. That's Ryan. We'll catch you next time.
Roadkill.